We're going to go look at an artwork and talk about it. It's an artwork that has some formative components to it. I don't know how much it impacts my own work. It may not be readily there, but it'd probably be best just to go look at it and see how it can help us think about narrative, temporality, time. Let's do it. I've chosen this Goya painting depicting the capture of a criminal, El Maragato, by Friar. One thing I like about the series of paintings is its relationship to cinema. It depicts a narrative of the capture of this criminal. The criminal, he comes across this house and tries to steal a horse and some other things. The friar wrestles the criminal, gets the gun away from him down here, and as the criminal is escaping, this friar shoots him in the leg, ties him up, and waits for the good guys to come. But when we look at the pictures themselves, they really speak to the kind of multiplicity of narratives that are involved in the kind of representation of this story. We look here, we see an interior, and then in the next scene we see a different kind of place spontaneously emerge. He's no longer in this space. And then if we look down again, he's not even inside anymore. And although he's still struggling here, the next scene would presumably be in the same location, and the action would have just unfolded more. But instead what we have is an exterior setting. It's not inside of this interior space anymore. I'm not sure where we've gone exactly, right? And then if we kind of look at the next scene, the action seems to be unfolding in a kind of logical order. They meet, they have this exchange, they struggle, the criminal is shot and tied up. But when we look at the location, that tells us something about the way the narrative is not a single story, but multiple voices all emerging simultaneously. So here he's like outdoors somewhere now, and then again he's even more outdoors over here. And then finally we're at the end of this story, and now we're like not even anywhere near this kind of like medieval dungeonous space. We're like outside. There's grass and there's like a nice little home. It's obviously intentional kind of confusion of location and sight while maintaining this sort of narrative action. And I think that those two things working together create a strange experience that I don't normally associate with painting, especially like narrative painting. I think he's trying to narrate the nature of storytelling, the sort of construction of storytelling through multiple voices and multiple tellings, multiple iterations, multiple retellings, the way that stories grow and become transformed into myth, and how these myths sort of peel off from reality and can change location, and details can shift radically. And we naturally do it. When I first looked at these paintings, I noticed these shifts in the sort of backdrop. It all seemed to be one continuous flow, and that's the general purpose of like narrative, to just pull us along on a seamless structure, right? A surface, and we kind of don't have to question anything, and we're subsumed into it, and our criticality fades away. Goya is hypercritical. He ruptures that surface for us by giving us these multiple backdrops and telling us to be critical of narrative. It's reflexive. This is the kind of thing that I wouldn't even expect from this kind of era. We think of reflexivity as a kind of postmodern or modernist kind of thing, where the storyteller reflects on the nature of the telling of the story and is critical of that process. So to me, these are kind of like postmodern in some way, but that's impossible because postmodern is a specific time frame, right? And these are before that. So they're temporal disruptions. They're both pre-modern, postmodern, modern. They're everything all at once. Looking at these things and thinking about them is helpful to dislodge our hardwired logic of time and what's modern and what's not, and what's pre-modern and who creates modernity. And only by kind of looking at them closely and over a long duration do you get all these kind of things. It doesn't happen by just looking for 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or people look at paintings for 5 seconds max. So I appreciate the museums keeping these on display almost permanently, because then that gives us the ability to return to them and continue to think about them in a way that doesn't happen with the swipe or the scroll. 2011, Jeff Wall photograph. We can think about this in relationship to the Goyas, I think. The thing that separates them is the media, right? So you have painting on the one hand and you have photography on the other hand. What you have connecting them is this sense of builtness. Long-term legacy of photography has been as the sort of documentation of reality, that it just simply tells us what is there. And painting has been often thought about in opposition to that, in the sense that it's not simply what's there, it's something that's built over time. It's thought of in the mind, it engages the process of painting, and it's a long-term kind of like commitment, and it's a building of some kind of image. And photography has been defined kind of like against that for a long time. What we have is Jeff Wall, who's a classic specifically known for challenging these problems of photography as a transparent media without mediation. So he's challenging that by building the picture, by setting it up in a way that it looks as if it's transpiring, and the photographer just simply points the camera and snaps. What's actually happening is, if you look at the people, they're very, very staged, and they're very much choreographed the way you would if you were painting. You would like put all the characters exactly where you want them, and he's doing that too in this case. Maybe a little bit of back and forth. The performance looks more live, but I don't know. Jeff Wall is known for this, not portraying reality but reenacting reality, right? So he'll see something and then he'll hire people to come in and perform the thing he saw, so he can then make a picture of it after the fact, belated, looking backwards, which is totally different from the way photography and reality have been known to work, which is in the moment. You're there, and it's like kind of journalistic. I was there. This doesn't have anything to do with being there. This has something to do with not being there. I saw it. I didn't get the picture. I have to recreate it after the fact. As far as like in relationship to narrative and the way that Goya is presenting narrative, it's a myth too. The myth of like 90s indie rock, maybe 2000. But this is really good. He has the image of the image maker in the corner there, right? The photographer. This is a key kind of like critical moment of breaking down these givens about photography and what its relationship to reality is. So this photographer has been perfectly staged, getting the decisive moment. Of course, rock photography is chock full of this sort of like intimate / journalistic unmediated relationship to reality. I mean, even the broken bottle, it's like perfectly staged, spilt and crushed. Jeff Wall, of course, is obviously dealing with the scale of painting, right? Setting up the scale of photography to be in dialogue with the scale of painting. You become like engrossed in this scene. I wish I had a beer right now. I'd just be like, I definitely grew up with this scene, right? This is like Austin, Texas. It's like mythical. It's like the United States, 90s, 2000s, indie rock sort of moment of breaking away from the programmatic structure of the music industry and doing your own thing. And it turns out that's all just like more bad ideology. No one was liberated. Yeah, I think all the ideas I spoke about connect to my interest, and they definitely connect to my practice. One of the things I think maybe my elaboration on those two works is it creates less certainty about what we're looking at, what it means, what era is it supposedly from, what era it reflects. When I look at both of those works in tandem, there's more complications. And I think that definitely connects to my interest in sort of delving into dismantling kind of common sense givens, like leaping across different genres, going from collecting to sculpting to performing to writing, and finding a practice that can kind of cross all these different kinds of boundaries, create a less certain, totalitarian, unified idea of what practice is, what it can be, what it's supposed to look like. I don't know, maybe just every 10 seconds delete the next 10 seconds. I'll put it in your hands to build it. Yeah, everything is put together belatedly after the fact, and I'll just trust you to use your own judgment to weave it together and